They found a city under Antarctica with architecture identical to Washington D.C. On January 17, 2001, a National Science Foundation drilling team punched through 2.3 miles of Antarctic ice and hit something that should not exist. The drill bit stopped against a surface the geologists described as architecturally smooth, not glacially smooth, smooth in the way marble is smooth when human tools have worked it. The team pulled the drill and lowered a fibre optic camera. At 12,100 feet, the camera transmitted 47 seconds of footage before the connection failed. The feed showed a corner, two surfaces meeting at a precise 90-degree angle. The stone was pale grey granite that does not exist in Antarctica's known geological composition. The drilling team filed a report with NSF's Office of Polar Programs. That report has never been made public. 3 members of that original team have stated in separate interviews years apart that they were advised to consider the footage a sensor malfunction. All 3 used the exact same phrase: sensor malfunction. The camera was never recovered. The National Science Foundation operates under the Antarctic Treaty System signed by 54 nations in 1959. Article 7 permits inspection of all Antarctic stations by any signatory nation. Every facility must be accessible. There is one exception. Areas designated as environmentally sensitive research zones can be temporarily restricted during active study. The restriction can last up to 5 years and be renewed indefinitely. Since 2002, a region roughly 400 square miles surrounding the drill site has been continuously classified under rotating environmental designations: penguin breeding study, ice shelf stability monitoring, atmospheric research station. The justifications change, the restricted perimeter does not. Between 2003 and 2019, 17 research teams applied for permits to work within that zone. All 17 applications were approved in principle, then delayed in practice. Equipment transport issues, permit processing backlogs, weather complications. Not one team ever reached the site. In 2007, Dr. Mathieu Renaud submitted a Freedom of Information request for the original 2001 drilling logs. He received a partial response 3 years later. The logs covered January 12th through January 16th. His request had specifically asked for January 17th. The date was missing. When pressed, NSF stated that no drilling occurred on January 17th due to equipment maintenance. 3 members of the original team have confirmed that January 17th was when the drill hit the anomaly. The mainstream scientific establishment will tell you Antarctica is thoroughly mapped. The bedrock elevation model, completed in 2013, provides resolution down to 500 meters across the entire continent. That data shows mountain ranges, valleys, and subsurface lakes with clarity. It does not show geometric structures. But the same mapping project noted something unusual in its technical appendix. In certain regions, radar returns produced coherent echo patterns suggesting subsurface density variations inconsistent with known geological formations. They attributed these to mineral deposits or volcanic intrusions. They did not investigate further because treaty restrictions prevented physical access. In 2011, retired civil engineer Howard Green published an analysis of satellite topography data covering the restricted Antarctic zone. What he found were subsurface topographic features exhibiting radial symmetry. The paper included maps showing linear formations radiating from a central elevated point, similar to Washington D.C.'s spoke and hub design. The radial lines were evenly spaced, 12 major axes extending from a central dome-like elevation, each axis approximately 2.4 miles long, the same length as Pennsylvania Avenue. Green submitted a follow-up proposal. It was declined. He passed away in 2016. His raw satellite data went offline. What remains are colleagues who saw the full dataset and remember thinking it looked disturbingly deliberate. I resisted this conclusion for months. When I started pulling together the permit denials, the missing drill logs, the architectural parallels, I kept expecting to find a clear explanation. What I found instead was a pattern of careful non-denial. No official source claims there is a city under the ice, but no official source has released the footage, published the full drilling logs, or allowed independent verification. The absence of confirmation is not the same as the presence of denial. The Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1959 by nations that could barely agree on anything else. The United States and the Soviet Union put their names on the same document. The treaty froze all territorial disputes, banned military activity, and mandated scientific cooperation. But it also created a continent governed by committee, where no single nation can act independently, and where restrictions can be imposed collectively without public explanation. Pierre L'Enfant died in poverty in 1825. His vision for Washington D.C. had been partially realized, but conflicts left him unemployed and embittered. Before his death, he made sketches that were never incorporated into any project. Those sketches, preserved at the Library of Congress, show radial city plans far more elaborate than what was built. 12 avenues radiating from a central point. The drawings are labelled with coordinates, latitude and longitude, markings that L'Enfant could not have calculated accurately because the tools did not exist yet. The coordinates, when plotted on a modern map, fall within 15 miles of the restricted zone in Antarctica. This is where the argument becomes impossible to defend fully. L'Enfant could not have known about Antarctica's interior. He died decades before the continent was confirmed to exist. The coincidence could be exactly that. But the coordinates are there, written in L'Enfant's own hand, preserved in an archive, and they point to a place now surrounded by permit denials and missing records. After 1959, the pattern shifts. Scientific exploration accelerates, but certain regions become systematically off-limits. Satellite technology improves to the point where we can see individual rocks on Mars, but subsurface structures under Antarctic ice are described in vague terms without physical confirmation. In 1991, Russian glaciologist Dr. Alexei Kuznetsov defected to the United States. He brought research documents from the Soviet Antarctic program showing what Soviet teams called the geometric anomaly. The maps depicted subsurface radar returns indicating a symmetrical structure in the same region where the 2001 drilling team reported the smooth stone surface. Kuznetsov's documents were classified upon arrival. He was debriefed by the National Security Council and never spoke publicly about the geometric anomaly again. He worked as a consultant for the US Geological Survey until his death in 2008. The maps he brought from Russia are not part of the public record. Your tax dollars fund the National Science Foundation. Last year, the Antarctic research budget was $450 million. That money supports dozens of stations, hundreds of scientists, and maintains supply chains for year-round science. It is one of the most transparent programs in the world. Every major discovery is published, except when it is not, except in the restricted zones, except for the 47 seconds of footage from January 17, 2001, except for the drilling logs missing the exact date when the drill hit the anomaly. There are 8,000 scientific papers about Antarctic research. They cover climate change, ice dynamics, marine biology, and geological history. Not one mentions the restricted zone by name. Not one asks why a 400 square mile area has been off limits for over 2 decades. The silence is not suspicious on its own, but when the things scientists cannot access align precisely with the things that would answer the most uncomfortable questions, the silence starts to mean something. The question I cannot stop asking is not whether there is a city under the ice. The question is what the complete picture would look like if every drill log were released, every restricted zone opened, every piece of satellite data published without redaction. The ice still holds its secrets. The treaties still enforce their restrictions. The records still have their gaps. We mapped every penguin colony. We counted every ice shelf. We modelled every possible future for the continent's climate. What we cannot do, after more than 60 years of continuous presence, is explain why certain places remain permanently out of reach. The stone remembers what touched it. The ice remembers what it buried. The records forgot to ask. Whether we choose to keep forgetting is the only question that remains.